Welcome to English.
Hello, dear boys of class 10. Welcome to English second paper class brought to you by this online platform. How are you all? I hope that all of you are doing very fine by the grace of Almighty. This is Simi Dango, lecturer in English, St. Gregory's High School and College. In our previous lectures, we have been discussing about two topics. As we have these two topics in our quiz syllabus, we have been discussing right form of verbs and take questions. Dear boys, in your quiz exam you will find three topics. Firstly, you will find some vocabs by which you have to fill up some blanks. Secondly, you will find some words, actually some verbs, by which you have to fill up some blanks correcting the form of verbs. Thirdly, you will find some sentences for which you have to write some tag questions. So dear boys, in our previous classes, we have been following a format for your class. As far we discussed, I along with Atif sir, we have been discussing actually practicing some exercises at the very beginning of your class. That means at the first part of your lecture. And in the second part of your class, we have been discussing some rules and examples about tag questions. In this lesson also, we will follow the same format. Firstly, you will find an exercise regarding right form of verbs. Secondly, we will discuss some rules and examples about tag questions. Now, let's move to the exercise. So here you can see some clues. Okay, so in this way you will find some word by which you have to fill up some blanks, and you have to follow the rules of right form of verbs while filling the gaps. So dear boys, now I am reading loudly the passage for you. You must have dash the name of Kazi Nazrul Islam. He dash our national poet. He dash as a rebel poet as well. He dashed into a poor family, but dire needs could not dash his potentiality. When the First World War first broke out, the army after the war he dashed to write poems. At that times his poems and songs dashed people against oppression. He dashed the Shelley of Bangla literature. We should dash him for his great deeds. So dear boys, at first try to write down by yourself. You can pause the video, think for a while and write down the answer. And after that, I will help you to write down the correct answer. So dear boys, here you can see you must have dashed the name of Kazi Nazrul Islam. So which word can we use here? So we can say you must have heard the name of Kazi Nazrul Islam. We will write down the past participle form of this verb here because here we have must have. After must have, we have to use past participle form of verb. So we will say you must have heard the name of Kazi Nazrul Islam. Secondly, he dash our national poet. We can use this word be here. We all know that be is the base form. We can use am is are was were instead of be. Okay, so we can say he is our national poet. He dash as a rebel poet as well. We can say he, as this sentence is written in passive form, we can say he is known. We can use know here. He is known as a rebel poet as well. He dash into a poor family. Okay, we can say he was born into a poor family. Not beer, we can say he was born into a poor family. But dire needs could not dash his potentiality. We can say hinder. Dire needs could not hinder his potentiality. After could not, we have to use present form of verb. Okay. When the First World War first broke out, he dash the army. We can say he joined the army. As we know the life of Kazi Nazrul Islam, we all know that he joined the army. Okay. After the war, he dashed to write poems. After the war, we can say began, not begin. According to the context of the sentence, we can say after the war, he began to write poems. At that times, his poems and songs dash people against oppression. Yes, we can say inspire. We can use inspire here. We will say his poems and songs inspired. Okay, as we are writing, as this text is written in past form, so we have to use past form of the verb. His poems and songs inspired people against oppression. He dashed the Shelley of Bangla literature. Now we can say he is called. Call here. He is called the Shelley of Bangla literature. We should dash him for his great deeds. We should remember him for his great deeds. After should, after actually modal auxiliaries, we use present form of verb. We should remember him for his great deeds. Now, dear boys, here you see the answer is written here. The answers are written here. You must have heard the name of Kazi Nazrul Islam. He is our national poet. He is known as a rebel poet as well. He was born into a poor family, but dire needs could not hinder his potentiality. When the First World War first broke out, joined the army. He joined the army. After the war, he began to write poems. At that times, his poems and songs inspired people against oppression. He is called the Shelley of Bangla literature. We should remember him for his great deeds. Okay. So now, dear boys, let's talk about tag question. This part is regarded as part 3 of tag question. So, at the very beginning of this lecture, we can see non-auxiliary verb have. Okay, if we have the word, the auxiliary verb have as main verb in our sentence, and if this have referring to state or condition or situation, then we can use have, has, had, do, does, did, this type of auxiliary verbs to make tag question. Okay, dear boys, here you can see your father has a bad luck. Okay, so this has is main verb here. Your father has a bad luck, hasn't he or doesn't he? Okay, I had a bad headache yesterday. So this had is main verb here, and this had indicates to past form or past indefinite tense. So we will write down hadn't I or didn't I. So dear boys, you can say your father has a bad luck, hasn't he or doesn't he? You can say I had a bad headache yesterday, hadn't I or didn't I? So I hope you have understood the rule. If we have the verb have as main verb, not as auxiliary verb, and if this have referring to state, then we can use all these auxiliary verb to make the question. Have, has, had. This will be had actually. Do, does, did. Okay. So if we have used to in our affirmative sentence, then we have to use didn't to write down the tag question. If we have used to in a negative sentence, then we have to use the auxiliary verb did to make tag question. Okay, here we have some sentences. You used to like him, didn't you? The boy used to eat junk food, didn't they? They used to play football in the afternoon, didn't they? Okay. When we have ought to in a sentence, then we have to use oughtn't to make take question. So here we have an example. We ought to love our country. Oughtn't we? We ought not disobey our parents. Ought we? We ought to love our country. Oughtn't we? We ought not disobey our parents. Ought we? Okay. So here we will talk about ellipsis. So ellipsis is a term when we don't use subject and verb in a sentence. Just like if we say a nice day, that means it's a nice day. Okay, a nice day, that means it's a nice day, but here we are not using it's. We are only using a nice day. So how to write down the take question for this type of sentences? A nice day, isn't it? Okay, a nice day indicates to it's a nice day. Okay, Muslim, that means you are a Muslim. Okay, aren't you? Right. So sometimes we can use take question in exclamatory sentence and it will be informal. Like, what a nice bird it is, isn't it? Informal. How beautiful the girl is, isn't she? Informal. So, some words like moon, earth, river, motherland, country, ship, ferry, train. So, these words are regarded as feminine gender. So, we will use she for this type of words. For moon, as this is regarded as feminine gender, we will use she. Okay, for earth also, for river, motherland, country, ship, ferry, train. So for this type of words we will use the pronoun she. Bangladesh is our motherland, isn't she? The moon shines at night, doesn't she? Japan is a prosperous country, isn't she? Right. Next. So for animal, baby, and inanimate material, we will use the pronoun it. Okay, for the animal, we will use it. For the baby also, we will use it. And for inanimate material, we will use the pronoun it. So here we have some examples. The baby is crying, isn't it? My pen writes well, doesn't it? A cat catches mice, doesn't it? Right. So if we have had better in a sentence, then we will use the auxiliary verb hadn't. Okay? For would rather, we will use wouldn't. You had better stay, hadn't you? You would rather go, wouldn't you? Dear boys, that's the end of today's lesson. If you have any problem regarding this lecture, feel free to ask me. You may have some question regarding your quiz, you can ask me. I will be there for you, always free to answer your question. Okay, dear students, take care. Thanks to you all.